Welcome to About Money, a different approach to investing you won't hear anywhere else. Your hosts, the AFC team, Mike and Al, are registered investment advisors who have a proven track record of managing long-term investments surpassing the markets. The information shared on the following program is for educational purposes only, and any investment advice given may not be suitable for all investors. And now, here's your AFC team, Mike and Al.
And it is Saturday, and we are talking about money. We've got so much to cover today. You know, last year, in 2022, 40 million people quit their jobs and went on to work for other jobs. What do you think? Will this year be less? Will it be more? We're going to discuss that as we go along. Last week, we talked about the National Association of Pension Advisors and the focus on what's called Secure 2.0. Every company with 5 or more employees is going to have a 401k by 2025 or pay penalties which are going to be equal to or greater than what you'd pay for a 401k. Better to have a 401k. But it all talked about the numbers and implementing new 401ks. No one was really talking about the quality of 401ks. What do you want your 401k to do? We're concerned with the quality, not only quantity, but the quality. So we're going to talk about that as we talk today. And we're going to shift and we're going to talk about what's going on in our industry, in the financial industry. There's a new survey cited by Michael Kitces. I don't know how you pronounce it.
Kitces, Mike.
Kitces.
And if you don't know who Michael Kitces is, he started out at a small brokerage firm, and he hated being an advisor. He didn't know he liked being an advisor, but he hated trying to find clients.
Okay.
And so he started his own thing. He worked for a firm, and he said, I'll just sit in the back room and make plans and help people do that. And just kept doing that and started his own blog and whatnot, and it took off for him. Very successful.
Become very well known within our industry.
Yep. Yes.
And he looked at a new survey out talking about the value proposition of financial advisors. Are you getting real value? That's the question. You know, these days we're going to shift because 3 years is a long time. 5 years is a very long time. 10 years is an eternity, and 18 years is beyond eternity. That's how long we've been there. What is the limit for shorter time frames? But we want to start with what's just going on, and that is what the House of Representatives did. They passed a debt limit bill.
You just threw that in there at the last minute. That was a low blow. You know, I had to go look at all 325 pages this morning.
Yeah. But if you look at it, the Republicans got what they wanted and the Democrats got what they wanted. The Republicans got to say, we're concerned with being fiscally responsible. We want to trim back a lot of government programs. And the Democrats got what they wanted. What programs are you going to cut? Because while the Republicans are talking about saving $4.8 trillion over 10 years, which is not insignificant, still, the forecast by the Congressional Budget Office is that we're going to have increased deficit of 21 billion. No, 21 trillion.
Billion, that'd be nothing.
What's 3 little zeros make a difference? You know, so what's going to be the impact? The potential impact is if no resolution is ever reached, it shuts down the government, essentially.
It'll raise our debt limit. It lowers our credit rate.
It does.
And raises our borrowing. They don't do that. So it's pretty catastrophic if it doesn't happen. And we know, Mark, you and I watching the markets, we know markets are going to be somewhat tumultuous coming up to this event.
And if you look at what happened on the day that they passed that bill, the market started out on a plus and it ended up on a significant negative. It was just like, oh, really?
Well, both sides don't really want to come to the table and negotiate. The Biden administration is saying, no, there's no negotiation, just raise the debt ceiling. And McCarthy's saying, no, we want some. And then they're pointing to the last 3 times they raised it during Trump, and saying that, well, he had the House and he had the presidency, so he could do what he wanted. It wasn't really an issue. Now you get divided, it becomes more of an issue.
So it's beginning to become an issue on Wall Street. Will we default? You know, so who gets hurt? You know, if you look at what the Republicans have proposed, they want to cut a lot of spending by the government. They want to cut the tax credits for electric vehicles. Mm-hmm. They want to cut a lot of the green incentives that were put into the Inflation Reduction Act, which is not really an Inflation Reduction Act, but it was a Build Back Better Act. They want to cut a lot of those incentives. They want to cut the staffing from the Internal Revenue Service. Mm-hmm. All of those things are not significant in terms of the poor people in this country. But what is significant is they want to, and what the Democrats are focused on and will focus on, is that the Republicans want to do away with the student debt forgiveness. The Democrats are going to make a big deal of that because that should push more students into their vote column. They want to increase the work requirements for people receiving Medicaid. That pushes 1.5 million people off Medicaid. Again, for the Democrats, it means those people may be voting for Democrats instead of Republicans. It puts somewhere between 600 and 900,000 people off food stamps. Again, something that would be beneficial for the Democrats to hammer on. Is it really something that should be done? The Republicans say we need fiscal responsibility, and I believe that's true. Is it going to come at the benefit of removing people from some of the help that the U.S. gives? I don't know. It seems like it's going to be a political football. It seems like it's a starting position for the Republicans to negotiate. And Biden says he's not going to negotiate. So we're going to see what happens. It's going to be a very interesting time to see what happens. How far will they push? So what happens now that the Republicans have put out their budget, or their requirements for the debt ceiling, it will go to the Republican or to the Senate, where there's a majority of Democrats, and that will be revised.
I think what they said they're going to do is rip it up. They said that what they're going to do is rip it up.
Yeah.
So.
And then it will go back to the House with a proposal from the Senate. If the Democrats can find 5 moderate Republicans to vote for the Senate-originated bill, it will move forward to President's signature. If the Democrats can't find it, there may be some negotiation that goes on, and things may move forward. My guess is that they'll find 5 Republicans that will support the debt limit. Republicans don't want to be saddled with shutting down the economy. It seems as though it's a political situation. But in negotiations, you never know for sure.
No, but you don't want to not come to the table and negotiate. I mean, the Republicans have put their plan out there.
Yep.
I mean, I think it is up to the administration now to come back to the table and negotiate. I don't think they really have a choice.
I'm not sure. If it comes to toe-to-toe, who gives?
I don't think the Republicans look like they're going to give in. I don't think McCarthy made his stance. He's not going to give in. He said, I put something out there. You need to come back and tell me what you want, and then let's move forward. But Biden just wants he wants an open checkbook. He's basically said no stipulations, increase the debt limit. That's not going to happen.
We'll see.
I don't think the Republicans are gonna fold on that. I think they're gonna hold to getting something out of it. This is the only capital they have. So if they give that up, what do they have going into a presidential election that they're just giving that up without getting anything? Zero. What capital do they have after? They basically lose any capital, any political will going forward if McCarthy gives it.
So the Democrats, I think, have already gotten what they want out of it. They want to cut students off. They want to cut the low-income people off. So there's going to be a lot of political hammering over that.
I think there's been negotiating on that. I don't think they're going to negotiate on the student loan thing. I think that they'll negotiate on the 600 people getting kicked off of Medicare stuff, but I don't think they're negotiating the student loan thing because a lot of people went through college and paid their loans back. Should they get a check too for paying their loans and doing what they needed to do?
I don't know.
Right, nobody knows. So it's not really, it's not fair to people who've worked hard and paid their loans back.
I paid my loans back.
Yeah, exactly.
On the other hand, when I went to college, my total undergraduate bill was $1,500 a month. My graduate school was $3,500 at Carnegie Mellon. I had this idea when my daughter went to college that we would pay half and she could pay half. And then I saw how much college was. I said, maybe if you pay a small portion, we'll pay the rest.
The cost is ridiculous. I don't disagree, but you hear of students who go on to college and they realize, there's no job market, so I'm just going to go back to college and get another degree and rack another 50, 60, 70,000 in debt. They get out and they got a PhD and a master's degree and 2 other master's degrees, but they have $400,000 in debt. And whose fault is that? To keep doing and going back because it delays them paying the debt. If they stay in school, the interest accumulates, but delays them paying the debt.
It does. Hang on. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Oh, yes, we're going to get to that. It seems so appropriate for our next subject coming up. I just want to close. The debt ceiling, that's going to be an issue that is going to be resolved in the next month, one way or another. There is a potential that we will default. Just keep that in mind. It's probably not a high probability, but there is some probability it will happen. But that brings us to the song, Daylight Come, and I Want to Go Home. Go ahead.
The late Harry Belafonte, 96 years.
Yep.
And that song is epitomized. Everybody knows that song. And he talked about that song. I listened to an interview, a past interview with playing, and it was a work song. He said it was a protest song because these guys picked bananas all night long and just wanted the tally man to come by and count their bananas so they could go home. And they were being paid so little to do the job that they were doing, right?
And a lot of people now are feeling the same way in this country.
There are a lot of people, but I don't think they're picking bananas all in the hot sun. I mean, not in the hot sun, but in the heat.
So there was an article in the Seattle Times.
Yep, about what people believe, what motivates workers, what people believe about the future, about their work, and how many, you talked about 40 million people changing jobs in 2020. What did the article? 56% plan to quit and find a new job.
56%.
Yeah, that's, Mike, that is.
That's over half the people.
Yeah, and they keep talking about recession. But with unemployment so low, right, I'm just like, how can they, and 56% of the people looking for a new job are optimistic they can find a new job, making more money too, like not just looking for a new job because they want lifestyle change or anything. It's like they think they can make more money.
And that's the primary reason is for them. They want to make more money.
Right. And you and I looked at studies where they say money doesn't motivate employees.
But a lack of money or low pay certainly creates a feeling that they're being taken advantage of.
Right. And I think if they, I don't know if that translates to people transitioning, knowing that they can go out in the market and make more money. If people are stagnant at a company, been there a long time, and they looked at people at the low end of the pay scale, and people at the top end found pretty much the same thing, that they weren't motivated by making more money. It was more like being connected to work, feeling good about what they do, and all those things. But these people are saying, no, we can go off and just want to make more money.
Yeah. And the fact is, unemployment is so low, they can.
Yeah.
And you mentioned last week that Swedish has to pay 20% more for nurses?
More. There's 1 million opening for nursing jobs. And they're trying to figure this out. The hospitals are trying to figure this out, how they can motivate, how they can get nurses back to work. Because so many of them quit. They got just burnt during the pandemic. They put too much on them. And it's a conundrum.
But it's happening in almost every industry.
It is. And so when we think about recession and we think about such a tight labor market, there's something called, you're familiar with it, Okune's Law.
Yeah.
The rise that it takes a 1% drop, a rise in unemployment will equal a 2% drop in GDP. But I don't see unemployment rising a whole 1%. I mean, that would mean 4.4% unemployment, and then it'd be negative. Would be negative GDP because GDP is running about 1.9, 1.8% per quarter.
1.1 for the first quarter.
Yeah,
they reported the numbers.
It's stingy.
But there's between 5 and 6 million jobs more than there are workers to fill those jobs.
I know.
And as long as that condition lasts, you're going to have low unemployment, and you're going to have people that can demand higher wages.
And demand flexibility.
Yep.
Demand, I want to work part-time from home. I'll come in this day and I want this, and I want to be able to leave at a certain time because my kid has softball at 4:00 and I want to be there. And I think they'll get a lot of these things that they want.
Yeah. Number one thing is money. Number two is benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of benefits, they're talking about flex hours. Saw very little talk about 401ks.
I don't think a lot of people know about them. Like, I don't think it's something that's really delved deep and studied in a sense that what people know about their 401ks. You and I talked to a lot of people, and they don't even have a clue who holds their 401k. Even my own wife asked him the other day about her retirement at the, with the state. And I'm like, well, it's with the state. What's with this? She's like, well, no, it says it's with Prudential. I'm like, no, I think, and she doesn't even know where it was. And I'm like, okay, I guarantee it's there. Well, it's not. It only says I had $3 in there, she said. I said, no, I guarantee there's more than $3. So we looked, and of course it had more than, it had $5.
$5. No, people will spend more time planning for a vacation than they do looking at their retirement fund.
Well, and one of the other studies I read said that when they talk, it was a behavioral finance study. They were talking about it, and people will tell you, they'll talk about vacations, they'll talk about everything else, they'll talk about what they want to do in retirement, but they won't talk about specifically their retirement and where things are and what's going on.
And that seems to be something that has changed since COVID. Prior to COVID, there were studies that were showing that it was the number one concern of working people is running out of money. Today, it seems like the time frame has shortened to how much can I make today?
I think so, and I think people think about, you know what COVID did? Because I worked a bit in the life insurance industry before. Years ago, I got started in that part of the business. People went out and were looking at buying life insurance. They thought about COVID brought their mortality closer to them. Mm-hmm. Time, like you say, 10 years was an eternity. Time shrunk for people. Said, wait a second, how much time do I have left? Is something like this? And how much money do I have? Do I want to spend it working? And a lot of people retired. A lot of people pulled the plug.
I remember a study that was done by Fidelity in 2017. 62% of people had less than 3 months of money for an emergency. Mm-hmm. 51 spent more than they earned. 48% had excessive credit card debt, and 57% didn't feel good about money. People spent an average of 3 hours a day worrying about how to pay bills. I wonder today if they just begin to think about, if I can't pay my bills today, if I'm spending more than I'm making, I just need to get another job which pays more.
It could be, yeah.
You talk to some of the business people and they will advertise for a position. Half the people don't show up. Not only do they not show up, but they don't even notify you that they're not showing up. And those that do show up, they go away, and by the time you do a background check, they've already taken another job. That's what's going on today in the labor market. But it seems to me that as we move forward in this period of time, and as more companies institute, because of Secure 2.0, companies with 5 or more employees have to have a 401k, there will be a shift back to think about it.
To think about retirement.
To think about and less about retirement than running out of money. Studies done before COVID showed that running out of money was the number one concern.
Yeah, because longevity kept increasing people's lifespan. And I think, was it last year or the year before, was the first year we saw life expectancies decline. Mm-hmm. Not just because of COVID, life expectancies were declining.
Although the anticipation is that will reverse.
Yeah.
And we'll go back up again. As things settle down, will people start looking at what they need in retirement? And we did some looking at retirement and found that if somebody's making $15 an hour, with Social Security, they're going to be, and if they've put away $300,000, they're going to be short of what they need. Most studies show that you need 10 times your earnings. No matter how you figure it, with Social Security, everyone is going to be short of it. Everyone. If you make $15 an hour, you're going to be short 12%. If you make $150,000, you're going to be short 30%. So do you continue to work, or do you cut back on your expense?
Depends on what you like, what you do, and if you like what you do.
So, and that assumption is that if having 10 times your income, that assumption means that you run out of money at age 85. And running out of money at 85 is not the most optimistic thing to happen.
Well, you just go out and commit a crime and go to prison, and they take care of you for the rest of your life. Isn't that the 85 plan?
Yeah.
That was a client I know, one of his cousins. That was the plan. I'm being serious. That was his plan. He'd already had been in prison once, and he figured, well, I'll just go commit a crime. I'll take care of the rest of my life.
I can think of better plans.
I can't too, but it makes me laugh when I know who he is and I know him, so it makes, when I think about it, it's funny.
We'll call that the Al Suzlane.
Don't subscribe to it.
So for most people, they're going to need 130% of their last income.
Well, you spend in an inordinate amount on the last few years of your life.
You do.
That's the problem, is that you're going along, and then that time comes when you have that health issue, and then you spend an exorbitant amount of money in the last 1 year and a half of your life. It's expensive.
It is expensive. And, when you look at the statistics and you look at the probability of someone ending up with cancer or another debilitating disease, it's over 50%. Mm-hmm. You think that you're going to continue going very well, but it doesn't.
All right. Well, you can always go pick bananas.
Yes. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Indeed, we're talking about incomes. We're talking about net worth. And there's a recent study we talked about. Kitces, how do you pronounce his name?
Kitces, Michael Kitces.
Michael Kitces talked about a new study that was out. Talked about how do financial advisors set forth their value proposition. We've set forth ours pretty clearly. Our value proposition is that we have a passion for creating and maintaining wealth for our clients. But in the survey, 76% said what differentiated them was their ability to understand their clients' needs and objectives. 76% said what differentiated them was the ability to understand their client needs and objectives. Al, you're laughing.
Well, I mean, that's if you don't do that, that's the job.
That's a legal requirement.
Legal requirement. It's called knowing your client. It's the basis for being a fiduciary is knowing. Even if you're not a fiduciary, if you're just in the business, you have to know your client.
That's the very, very basic thing.
Yeah, that's the first guy who just got his 65 license walks into the brokerage, and that's what he has to do. Understand your client.
That's his differentiation. And it began on day one, and it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. That doesn't sound. So they ask, what's your value proposition? And 72% said their value proposition was they deliver above average service.
I like Kittis's response. I like to know the 28% who don't. What do they say? No, our service is crappy. Please come and work with us. We make it up in other ways, right? Is that what he said?
Yeah. You know, the fact is, if you want to talk about superb service, there's a firm in Seattle, and I won't name it, but I've talked to one or two of their financial advisors and what they do. And this is their service model. They don't have many clients per person, and this is the reason why. This guy was describing to me, he has a client when it's raining outside. Sometimes she'll call him up and say, would you come walk my dog? Because it's raining outside. And sure enough, go down in the building, get into his car, drive over to her house in Magnolia, go up, take the dog for a walk in the rain. She will call him sometimes and say, I was at the grocery store, but I forgot to get a loaf of bread, or I forgot to get this. Would you go to the store and pick it up for me? Now, she's a lot closer to the store than he, but you know what? Gets up from his office, he goes down, gets in his car, he drives to the grocery store, he gets the loaf of bread or whatever she forgot, delivers it to her, and then drives back to the office. He does her checkbook. She doesn't have to do any bill paying. It's all taken care of. He takes all the information and takes it to the tax attorney to do the taxes.
That's called concierge service.
It is.
Concierge service model. Haven't you? Where have you been?
And if she wants to go to
Wait
theater,
a second. Does he do it? Does he pick up the dry clean? That's what I want to know.
He will.
He will.
And
I'm going to work there.
He makes arrangements for, if she decides to go to the theater, he makes arrangements for the tickets. And he sometimes arranges transportation. He will make dinner reservations. That is above average service. That's quality service. That's extraordinary service. If that's what you're looking for and you're listening to this program, that's not Adam's Financial Concepts. I believe we deliver service which may or may not be average. And yes, there are times we have had a client that called up and she was sick and she needed somebody to go to the store and pick up medications or pick up things. And I called my wife and my wife went and picked it up, took it to her. But that's an extraordinary circumstance. We've had that happen maybe 2 or 3 times in 18 years.
Yeah, I'm helping a client right now, though, with getting a parcel of land they have converted into a parking lot.
Yeah.
It has been a year's project, but, I've done a lot of legwork on it, phone work, but nothing crazy. But it's okay.
Yeah, we do those kind of things. But that's not extraordinary service. That's taking care of our clients.
What is our objective? What is our job? What are we supposed to do?
Our value proposition is a passion for creating and maintaining wealth.
Okay, so where do they want us? You want us walking the dog, or do you want us paying attention to what's going on with the companies we have in the portfolio and making sure that...
Yeah. Oh, the other part of the service that I mentioned, well, that's this company. Well, that's their service. Their investment philosophy is essentially to put everybody in the same kind of things and do an asset allocation and a rebalance once a year. And they're looking for clients who have so much money they don't know what to do with it all. And so they really don't care how their investments perform.
I know who you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. And I can remember the reason I got involved with this is because one of their clients was running out of her husband had died, left her a whole bunch of money at this firm, and they were doing the management the regular way, and they were doing all those errands for her, and they sent her a notice and called her and said, if you don't reduce your spending, you're going to run out of money. And she said, how can I reduce my spending? You guys have to do more for me.
Go make me more money.
So, I mean, they had just average performance. They were happy with average performance, and they were looking for clients who had an abundance of money so that they, even if they lost 90% of what they had, it would not change their lifestyle. But there's not that many people in the world that have so much.
That's top 1%, or half of 1%.
1/10 of 1%.
Yeah.
Maybe 1/100th of a percent.
But Mike, back to your point about creating exceptional. I can't remember the last time I talked to a serious client. I became a client or prospect that said the people they were talking to said that they could give them above average or even average return. Every person I've talked to said, all the people they talked to said, yeah, we can give you the 4 or 5%.
Yep.
4 or 5%.
Studies have been done.
4 and 5% when inflation's now running at 6 and 7, and some taxes are going to expire in the next few years that you're going to, and 4 and 5% is what they're telling them they can do. Mm-hmm. And you know what the clients, the prospects say, oh, that's good. That's good, right? It's good. When you put those numbers down and calculate out 15, 20 years with 4 or 5% against what the S&P's done, 9.9, it don't look so good.
So I had a client that I got in 1986 when I started in this business. Her husband had died in 1978, just at the peak when interest rates were so high. Mm-hmm. And she had a financial advisor, stockbroker in those days, who put her into some very nice bonds that were paying a lot. And so she had a really nice income. Her husband had died. His income had gone away. But with the insurance money that they had and a little money socked away, put them into bonds, and her income was really satisfactory. By 1986, a lot of those bonds had been called away. They renewed the bonds you could buy in 1986 compared to what you could buy in 78. Mm-hmm. The interest rate was half. Mm-hmm. The income had dropped by 50%. Mm-hmm. And not only that, because of inflation had meant that was not a 50% cut. It was closer to a 70 or 80% cut. And she was saying, what can I do? What can I do? And in our case, it was fortunate enough that we were able to achieve a return where she could take 8% out of the portfolio every year. And she ended up spending the rest of her life not running out of money, but not having an excess either. And she went through a fluctuation. But had she been 4% or 5%, it never would have worked.
No, but fluctuation, I talk to a lot of people about. You can't worry about the fluctuation. I mean, famed investor Bob Rodriguez, who ran a fund down in California, the name of the fund here, averaged 14.2% a year. And I read an excerpt from a talk he gave at the Wharton School of Business. And the students are asking him, and the professors are grilling him on the fluctuation, the volatility, and the plan. And he's like, well, what do I care about next year or next week? Or if I like the investments and I know and I have a real confidence that they're going to perform, then I'm not worried about the short-term fluctuation. I'm willing to put up with the short-term fluctuation for the long-term gain that I know I'm going to get.
Yep.
And I think Warren Buffett's the same. We looked at his rap sheet several weeks ago, and he's had some 40% misses on the market.
Yep. He's had 100% gains as well.
Absolutely, right. He has, but he's also missed. And so it just shows you that he's the best in the world. He's the gold standard, and he knows that there's going to be times when we're going to be down and times when we're going to be way up.
And those are not times which scare us out of the market.
No. And going to safety, going to these ideas of people talking about safety and then, we're going to put all our money to safety and then we're going to look for opportunity, short-term opportunities. That's extremely hard to do.
It is.
To get in and get out at the right time to capitalize on those short-term gains.
So we're coming to a commercial break. Don't go away. We've been talking about the debt ceiling. We've been talking about 401ks. We've been talking about the value proposition of financial advisors. We're going to tie this all up. Hang on. So we've been talking, and we were talking in the last segment about the survey that was done for financial advisors. 76% said their differentiation was the ability to understand their client needs and objectives. That's a legal requirement. That's 100% requirement of every single financial advisor. Doesn't set you apart. It means you're just legal. If you're not doing that, you go to jail. And their value proposition was delivering 72% above average service. Mathematically impossible that 72% are giving above service. But so that's the financial advisor side of the business. What about the firms? What's happening in the firms? I think that's important to understand
The
as
big
well.
the big firms.
The big firms
You're talking the Fidelities and the TDs and the Schwabes
and the Merrill Lynches,
The Merrill Lynches.
and the UBS
and the banks. The banks are
and the banks. But even some of the large RIAs, what's happening?
Oh, and some of those guys have gobbled up small firms and they're huge.
Yes.
And there's a lot of, Mike, there's a lot of private money, equity money coming into that market, buying up because they see the cash flow and this and like, oh, wait a second.
Because they need the money.
And the broker dealers, some of the broker dealers have gotten so massive. My friends at other firms have just said, see you later, looking for small broker dealers. But then my question to them is, okay, when is this one going to get swallowed up?
So what's happening? If you look at it from 2014 to 2017, costs were growing faster than revenues in 70% of the firms. 70% of the firms. That was a higher number from 2011 to 2014. It was only half the firm. Today, I would guess it's more than 70%. And so what's happening in these firms is if your costs are growing faster than revenues, what do? You cut back on your cost.
Yeah, because because a lot of people don't see this, but pulling the veil back on the financial is compliance departments are just massive. And with any new government regulations comes massive amounts of compliance. I had one, Mike, before we started working together, and it happened to another friend of mine in the firm we were at. And I sent an email to someone, and they said, well, there was something in that email, an account number or whatever, and they decided you have to encrypt all your email, every single email. So the client had to go through and open an account and do all this stuff. Clients just stopped responding to my emails because they couldn't get into the emails. Mm-hmm. And there was no reversal for it. I couldn't fix it. I couldn't go back and talk to them and say, okay, how do I do this and get this set up right? They just blanket came down and slapped every single email with, this is what compliance was doing.
Yeah, so compliance has gotten tougher, but service has gotten less.
Service is terrible.
There was a report that came out from the Custodial Alternatives Special Report from Inside Information in 22. And I quote this. This is from an advisor who wrote, I have used Schwab as my preferred custodian since the early 1990s, and I've experienced many transitions with Schwab. The last 2 years, this is since COVID, the last 2 years and still today, Schwab's service to advisors is abysmal in nearly all aspects. Awful. And it's not isolated. Another advisor of TD Ameritrade wrote it, last year with TD Ameritrade was a nightmare. Not only long hold times, but lack of replies through the message board on VO1, unqualified people handling the request, and worst of all, they couldn't keep up with the qualified plan distributions, like required minimum distributions from IRAs. And that started in October of 2021. Some of the requests were not paid until after the year end. Some were sent without identifying the donor, and some were duplicated. It took forever to get it all straightened out. I got tired of apologizing to clients. We're seeing more and more of that right now. And with inflation, it's putting additional pressure on firms, additional pressure on what they earn compared to what they're bringing in.
Yeah, I talked to several clients that had Fidelity accounts that said the same thing. The service has just gone right down the...
You talk to most people at most firms, whether it's Morgan Stanley or UBS or some of the others, the Fidelities, the Schwabs, the firms are cutting back on their service.
They must have been in the Kits Assist survey. They must have been the 72% in Kits Assist survey.
So we had our 401k set up at Aspire for the record keeper, at TD Ameritrade for our custom portfolios, our self-directed brokerage accounts, and at Matrix for the mutual funds. And our third-party administrator was Peniagatu Pension Advisors, PPA. PPA sold out to Definity, a national third-party administrator. Aspire sold itself to PCS, Pension Custodial Services. As a record keeper, PCS had to get a cash infusion to survive. And in my great wisdom, I decided to look for a new TPA because the TPA that we had actually filled out the wrong forms. And one of our clients got a penalty notice from the IRS because the wrong form had been filled out. We had to intercede with that, and actually we got it correct. Definity didn't do that. Definity let it roll. If we make a mistake and it costs the client money, we make up to the client. Definity didn't even do that. But we got that reversed, started looking for a new third-party administrator, and I'm happy to say we're Hunnix & Shoemaker now. But Nationwide came through and said, We're a very large insurance company. We're in the 401k market. We're going to commit additional resources to the 401k while everyone else is cutting back. And I believed it. And they had some information. This was 2021. That was 2021. 2022, they cut back too. The service has been abysmal. I have to go through every one of their monthly charges for client or quarterly charges for clients. Every single one was every single one, and it wasn't big. The total was like $20. Some got charged too much, some got charged too little. One of the self-directed brokerage accounts had too much money taken out of it. There were two separate self-directed brokerage accounts. They took all the money out of one account, so we had to correct that. They forgot to pay us. I mean, it's been just an absolute disaster what's going on in the industry. For us, we're continuing to see our revenues grow and our cost, we maintain that. But it's a situation in which, do you know what the value proposition is for your advisor? Are they just focused on doing what's legally required, of knowing your needs? Do they really think that they give above average service?
Do they give above average return? How about return?
Oh,
Do no one care about that anymore?
no one cares about that. We do. We very definitely. That is our value proposition. Anyway, that wraps us up for today.
Mike, I got to say one thing with Harry Belafonte on the radio. Should have wore your Hawaiian.
Should have worn it.
And plus, it's 70 degrees for the first time.
And we don't have to go pick bananas. Have a very good week, a very good weekend, and we'll be back next week to talk about money, because if it's Saturday, we do want to talk about